Hi everybody, welcome back to another one of my monthly forecasts. If this is the first time you're seeing me, my name is Angela Peterson and I am a psychic medium and shamanic practitioner in Sedona, Arizona. We will be doing a forecast for October, the overall energy in the collective. And before we get started, I first would like to announce that I am doing a Goddess Within workshop. This is going to be an online workshop for women, and I'm actually going to insert a video clip telling you all about this workshop. Hello, beautiful souls. I am very excited to invite you to my upcoming workshop called Goddess Within. It's happening on October 12th. In this workshop, we're going to be talking about a very special cyclical rhythm that only women have. We'll be discussing how this rhythm relates to different cycles of life, such as the 4 seasons, the 4 archetypal phases of womanhood, and even the 4 directions on the medicine wheel. We will also be learning about the dance between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and how understanding the difference between the two can help you feel more empowered in your life on a daily basis. As a bonus for signing up, I will also throw in a couple of rituals that were given to me from Spirit. These are powerful rituals that I have done myself, and these rituals help us to come into a state of divine love and connection with ourselves. We'll be gathering from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, and the energy exchange for this workshop is $44. I would be honored for you to join me in this workshop as we dive deeply into the feminine and reawaken our ancient wisdom. You can register on my website at healingwithangela.com/events. I really hope to see you there. The link to register for that workshop is below this video. Now, let's get started with the October monthly forecast. I know that in the September forecast, I did talk about there being some civil unrest, and I also saw the rose-colored glasses being taken off, and I think that for a lot of people, there was kind of an awakening that happened, especially after the Charlie Kirk assassination. I think a lot of the response from that was really positive, and then there was some really horrific responses to that as well, which I think are very sad. But I think that that gave us a glimpse into really how divided we are as people, and in some ways that is very scary. And that division has really created within people a lack of willingness to work together. And sometimes there are souls that, make a contract to come into this life to make an impact, and something builds up, and then their death makes an even bigger impact or a bigger ripple effect in a way that is meant to be a force of awakening for the people. And I think that's exactly what we saw happen in the month of September. I just want to say that one thing I respected about Charlie Kirk was the way that he went about his work. Even though he had really strong beliefs, and did I agree with all of his beliefs? Not necessarily. But the way he went about it is with communication. It's about talking. It's about debating with people. Like, how do you get anywhere in a world if you do not communicate with each other first and foremost? And from his standpoint, he was coming from a very, logical, calm, practical place. And he was not trying to force anything on anyone. He was simply trying to debate it with them. And in so many of those debates, what I was seeing is that the people he was debating with were coming from a place of woundedness. So you had a lot of emotion in the responses. And even if some of those responses are, the people who were coming from the wounded place, even if their arguments were really good and their debates were really good, the overall thing that I noticed was the amount of trauma I noticed in their energy and in the way that they communicated was coming from a very emotional place, which there's nothing wrong with that. Of course we have emotions, but there was such a powerlessness in so much of that was really interesting for me to witness. And when we come from powerlessness, we can get very aggressive and violent even in that energy. And when we come from that place, it actually makes everything so much more toxic. It's a toxic way of relating to other people. And it's almost impossible to make any progress from that place. So there is so much in this experience that we all just had. that makes us realize what kind of healing people need right now. It doesn't matter what beliefs you have. It doesn't matter how you choose to live your life. If you are coming from powerlessness or woundedness, that means healing is needed, no matter where you stand on a political or religious spectrum. And this is what I hope people are realizing and taking out of this experience so that we can move forward from a healing standpoint, not from a powerless, angry, and violent standpoint. Because that is the only way we're going to be able to move forward as a species. So as we move into the month of October, the first feeling I get for October is that it is the perfect month to do shadow work. And shadow work is a type of healing if you've never heard of it. Shadow work just means diving into the shadow or the unconscious of our psyche to reclaim and re-own and integrate the parts of us that have been wounded or lost or abandoned and even deserted. Soul retrieval is the main way to heal, which is gathering pieces that we've lost over time back to ourselves. And the way to do soul retrieval is to actually do it through shadow work, which is the reintegration of these things. So October is coming up as a month where it is so easy to walk into that shadow, to face it. October is a month where the veil is very thin, and it feels like an opportunity for getting a lot of information, downloads, and even premonition. But the premonition feeling that I have kind of goes along with this feeling of an eerily quiet and still energy, almost like the calm before the storm. There's this energy in the air in October that almost feels palpable, almost like you could touch it. Kind of like a thick fog moving through and bringing with it this feeling of a chill. And if I relate that to like the veil thinning, it is because your senses are going to be more heightened. You're going to really sense energy. You may sense spirits and beings from the other world. You may just be more aware overall of things that are hidden in the shadows or in the darkness, which is why I actually want to encourage you to do shadow work. And this energy doesn't feel harmful. It doesn't feel dangerous. It feels necessary. It feels like this, like a revelation in a way, just really becoming aware of where the darkness is, where it lies, and also noticing within yourself what parts of you have not been healed or integrated and are residing in your own shadow. I would caution though that you don't heighten this energy by watching scary movies, anything that adds to fear or the adrenaline in the body. I would be careful with that this month because I know that, this is a month of it's Halloween, and so everybody is celebrating and going to haunted houses and all of these things. I'm going to caution against that for this month because I feel the water element very strongly in this month, which is connected to the kidneys, the adrenals, the bladder, the neurological system in the brain. So this energy feels very sensitive this month. And I think that's probably partially because of the veil thinning and everybody's senses just being more heightened in general. But when we talk about the adrenals, we want to be really careful with adding to the stress of the body. So just be mindful of that when it comes to the scary things and the violent things that you participate in this month. And then adding to that about the water element, we also have the thyroid. The thyroid is connected to the water element. And I'm definitely getting a strong throat chakra energy for the month of October. The throat chakra relates to our sense of self-expression. It connects to divine will. So it represents our will and divine will and the difference between the two. So when we make choices in our lives, because the throat chakra is all about choice. So if I am making choices from my fear versus from my faith, if I'm making choices from control rather than trust, then that is when we see our own will trying to overpower divine will. And we do have the koala spirit coming out this month. So the koala spirit says spirit has a plan. There is an overall message here about learning how to trust and move out of your own way. So if you have a tendency toward controlling, and especially controlling from fear, because we have all these things sort of stacking up on top of each other, with the water element being the element of fear, then you really need to pay attention to how you are making choices and doing things out of fear rather than trust or faith. And that energy is also required, the trust is somewhat required, courage for sure, and a certain amount of trust is required to do healing work, especially when you want to do healing work with your own shadow, which is where a lot of repressed emotions, including fear, reside. The other thing about the koala spirit is koalas connect to empathy. They represent the emotions, compassion, kindness. And I actually just made a video titled Empaths and Emotional Trauma, How to Be Emotionally Resilient. And if you are interested in watching that video, you can find it on my YouTube channel. I definitely recommend that video for any of you who are empaths. It's one of those senses that are going to be heightened this month of October. Another message of koala is about rest and making sure that you get enough rest. Now this goes along with the adrenals, right? The kidneys are life force. Kidneys and adrenals, they're in the water element. So life force energy, but also ancestral chi. When we experience a lot of fear or stress, then it really stresses those organs in the body. And you want to do your best this month to keep cortisol levels as low as possible. And you want to avoid overstimulating your nervous system because that can also affect your neurological system as well as the organs previously mentioned. So make sure you're getting enough rest, as the koala says. And rest doesn't always look like sleep, so just be mindful of what rest is to you and do things that promote a calmness of energy. The other animal that we got, and it did show up twice actually in the cards, we have the wasp. On this card it says sometimes life stings, and on this card it says anger, retaliation, and jealousy. When we are in that amount of fear, or we are coming from that place of powerlessness, just like I mentioned before, then anger is sort of the natural result. It's a secondary emotion, and it always sits on top of something else, and that is usually fear, powerlessness, or even grief and sadness. But it is possible that this month we probably will be seeing more outbursts of anger from people, probably more civil unrest and discontent within the collective. Now, in some cultures though, the wasp actually represents the divine feminine. So wasp doesn't always have to have such a negative connotation. Sometimes when we look at the wasp energy, it really does represent the feminine, right? And in the feminine is the shadow. The feminine energy is the darkness, and the masculine energy is the light. And in the darkness is really the birthplace of creation. And it's also where true power resides. It's where our highest potential and even unlimited potential resides, in the feminine energy and in the shadow. And the process of integration is just a reclamation of that power. And we are always discovering ways that we can be more in our power. Another animal, we actually got 3 this month, is the panther spirit. And this one was on the bottom of the deck, and I was like, yeah, it has to come, because it definitely matches the energy, and it's about reclaim your power. So like I said before, what we're seeing in so many people is powerlessness. It's a feeling of being out of control, or feeling like, they're being attacked, and maybe some of them are being attacked. But the truth is that when we are truly in this place of power and integration, which again, I'm going to encourage you to please watch my video on emotional trauma and empaths, because I talk about how to reclaim power, and it's through soul retrieval, and it's through this shadow work. But the Black Panther spirit represents the night. It represents the divine feminine. And so there is a lot of potential this month for us to heal some really big, really deep things. And I would say that the majority of these wounds, or the things that need to be healed, is actually ancestral. And we did have that card come out, ancestors, generations. You can see the snake medicine on here as well, which is about transmutation and death and rebirth. A lot of us are going through pretty intense cellular upgrades, and there's a first wave of people that are sort of moving through what I've talked about before in some of my other videos as they call it the veil. It's not the veil of, passing from life to death. It is a transition from one vibration or frequency and into another one. And in order to do that, we have to shed a lot of these old things that we've been carrying so that we can enter into that higher timeline. So with that being said, the more you integrate this month, the more you are self-aware, and the more you face your fear and walk into your shadow for healing purposes, the more you line up with what you really want. We have this card showing up, which is what you want wants you. And you can see the spirals. These represent spirals of manifestation. So October is a really powerful month for manifestation, but in the form of planting seeds. So it's kind of like if we looked at the darkness of winter time. Winter time is a time of germination. And so for October, I'm seeing a lot of seeds that are being planted in order to germinate for future manifestation. And the amount of time for those manifestations to take place is going to be different for everyone. So you could plant a seed in the beginning of October and have it come to fruition at the end of October. It really just depends on what it is and who you are and your intentions and the healing work that you do around that as well. So with everything that I just spoke about, diving into the darkness for healing is all leading to a culmination point. And that culmination, we have the lotus flower, which is about unfoldment. And I'm sure many of you know that the lotus flower is renowned in the spiritual communities because of its ability to rise above the muddy waters, which reflects the human's capacity to rise above any challenges or hardships. The lotus flower for a very long time has been a symbol for spiritual rebirth. And it's also connected to the crown chakra, which is our 7th chakra. This is the energy of divinity. It's connecting to spirit and inviting spirit into our bodies. So for those of you who have been on this journey for a long time, you've been devoted and you've been doing your healing work, and this has been your focus, then hang on a little longer because you are almost there. There's a little more to walk through in the month of October, but November does feel at this point like it is lightening up, or that there will be a manifestation. Something comes to fruition for you in November that feels like the fulfillment of a long-awaited dream or desire that you've had. Be courageous, face your fears in October, and I will see you on the other side in November. Take care.